You get out that fresh notebook and you get a pen and you stare at the page and you just can't think of any great ideas. You try to think up a few things and everything sounds a bit silly. So you walk off and make yourself a cup of tea, start staring in the fridge, then you go back to that piece of paper and still no ideas. Trying to come up with creative ideas, be it for a content, a creative project you're working on, or any other thing that you need to do for your business, sometimes it can feel really hard to be constantly coming up with new ideas. But coming up with great ideas doesn't have to be hard or complicated or drawn out. It just requires a process, a bit of audacity, and some headspace. So in terms of a process, it's really important not to just have that blank piece of paper, stare at it and hope that somehow your brain might come up with some ideas. If you have a process, you have a starting point, something to start drawing things out of your mind. And if great ideas don't initially come, it at least gets you started, and that sometimes is the biggest hurdle. So the first thing that you need to do is brainstorming. This is where you just start putting out all different ideas and keywords. So whatever the subject that you need to come up with an idea around, start thinking about different words or phrases or possibilities that could come from that. And it doesn't matter if they're silly or you may not go anywhere with them. Just start, dumping out all different kinds of ideas. And then the next step is research. So start looking at some of the ideas that you pulled out and researching them. Find out what other people have said about this, or find forums and see if people have been asking questions about it. See what else is out there on those subjects, and they may spark new ideas for you. Then you'll be able to map out and collate that research. You can start to, refine it more and start to write down what ideas came from that brainstorming and research process. And if you're a very visual person, you may even want to create mood boards or some kind of visual reference for the kind of ideas that you drew from your research. Now, the audacity part of it. This is where you need to have the audacity to write out every single idea, even when they're silly. And get really creative. Play with words, write down silly things, try out different word combinations and different crazy ideas. It's where you don't hold yourself back. You don't filter and edit yourself, but instead you're just letting every crazy idea possible down on the paper. You're just letting it all flow out. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. You may have ideas that, you might try out and they're just a complete flop. But the point is to just get things out there. It's not about perfection and looking like this great creative that always comes up with brilliant ideas. That's how you get to the brilliant ideas, is by putting out the bad stuff first. And this is where my pancake theory comes into play. Now, when you're cooking pancakes, often the first pancake isn't going to turn out too well. I think there's a bit of a science behind why that happens, whether it's the pan's not quite hot enough or it needs that first pancake on it just to be the right thing, right heat and all that crazy stuff, so that the rest of them turn out well. But you have to do that first one. You can't somehow just skip the first pancake and get on with all the nice ones. You have to get that first dud one out the way, and then the rest is going to go really well. So it's the same with ideas. You need to put out the dud ideas. You need to get it all out of your head, get it out of your system. Put it down on paper. It doesn't matter how stupid or silly it is. By doing that, it's getting your mind working and flowing and starting to get you into that flow state where the good ideas will start to roll. But if you never do that, then you're only going to hold yourself back and you'll never get to the good stuff. So let the duds get out. And finally, giving yourself headspace. This is so important when it comes to coming up with ideas. Your mind needs time to process things, because we've got so much information coming into our minds and things that it's got to sort through, that if we just keep putting more and more information in, then we're not going to be able to actually process and come up with ideas from that. We need quiet time when our brain can actually process through everything we've been thinking about and everything that we've been researching and looking at, and start to piece it together and come up with ideas from that. You'd actually be surprised that if you do the whole stage of research and mind mapping and all that, and then give yourself some time out, your mind might actually come up with the ideas for you without you feeling like you have to try at all, because you've given your mind that time to process everything you've seen, everything you've looked at and been thinking about, and it will start to piece it together and find ideas from that. Plus, because your mind's so clever, it will also be able to mix it with other things from your past experiences, other knowledge that you already have, and it will start to draw things together and come up with something really creative, something you may not have thought of if you tried to just be really rigid regimented about it and just, think about just what you're looking at right in that moment. Instead, you're letting your mind, pull together from all different places to come up with great ideas. So some possible ideas for giving yourself mind space is things like going for a walk, or taking a nice warm shower or a bath, or doing something with your hands that doesn't take much thought, like baking something really slowly, or knitting, anything that you're good at that you don't really have to think about too much. Going for a drive, going for a swim, anything where you're using your body physically or just resting, and your mind doesn't have to think too much about the task that you're doing. Instead, it can focus on processing your ideas. This is why you'll often find that you'll have your best ideas while you're in the shower or about to fall asleep at night. Now, once you have those brilliant ideas, if you really want to take things further to make it even more brilliant, here's some other little things you can be doing. First of all, rebounding ideas. So this is where you find someone else that you can talk to about your ideas, and they might have further ideas from that, and you can start to bounce off each other to create something even better. So you might tell them your idea, and then they might say, oh, have you thought about trying this as well? Or what about doing this? And then you think about that and think, oh, actually, that's given me another idea. And before you know it, you've come up with something even better. And keep an ideas bank. If random ideas come to you, have somewhere you can write them down so you can keep referring to them. And even if they're just random things that you can't really categorize because they're a bit of a half-baked idea, still write it down, because when you're in those moments where you're struggling to think of something, you can look back at that bank of ideas and maybe one of those ideas will spark something for you. So don't let any ideas go to waste. Make sure that you're always writing them down, no matter how silly they are, if they're only half thought through, because you never know where they could lead in the future. So if you want to learn more about creativity, branding and graphic design, then be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.